Welcome to Crackle Pop Studio.
Thanks for coming.
Andy Smith.
Johnny Sangster.
This is our studio. We started upstairs behind that window.
How long has it been?
I think it's been 18 years.
Oh my god. That's amazing.
Yeah, and we're still standing. Yeah. Yeah, and that was like a little 500 square foot office that we turned into a overdub and mix space. And then,
lots of great records recorded there.
Yeah, actually did record some bands in that little tiny office. And then about 7 years ago, I think, is when it opened up this little coffee roaster that was underneath us.
Yeah.
Cheers. And our landlord convinced us that we needed to move in. So,
Let's take a look.
shall we take a look? Here. Welcome. Come on inside. Step into the control room. Kitchenette. Sorry, it does not have a stovetop.
Get your snacks.
Yeah, it's a
Coffee.
snack central. Yeah.
And then
We have what really convinced us to move in here was this. This half of the studio has 20-foot ceilings.
now when we first started looking at this space, it was just a blank rectangle of space.
Right. From one end down to the other. If you peek through the booth there to the back wall of the control room, that was the other wall. None of these walls existed. And we ended up doing a Kickstarter and then got a ton of support from local musicians and friends and
Amazing
family.
community support.
Yeah, to raise the money to do the build out. One of the cool things that we offered was our friend Tim Kerr, who's an artist from Austin, Texas, legendary punk rocker. He's been doing murals around the world for the last, 15, 20 years. And we asked him to do a donor painting, which we thought would be like a small painting somewhere in the studio, and we could put donor names by it. Part of the joke was that he likes to sign his art, your name here.
Right.
Like, you start a band, you start a magazine. But he came and we had one wall framed in, this first wall over here, and he looked around and he goes, I'll take that wall. We had no idea. And he just, got up on the scaffolding and did the whole painting. It was a very cool couple of days.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It's like, okay, this is
Honored to have this here.
Yeah. Let's see, if you continue through this way, there's this booth, which usually gets used as an amp room or for putting a singer in while the rock band rages in the other room. Or you can put a drum set in here. It fits pretty nicely. And put your quieter instruments out in the other room. And then you can look in through to the control room. It's basically 3 rooms.
Yeah.
And all of the walls are angled out in trapezoids.
Nothing is parallel.
Yeah. Except for these 2 walls. Wait a second. That's why we put these nice wood diffusers. Yeah. With barnwood from the San Juan Islands.
Do you want to talk a little about how this room is really flexible acoustically?
Well, yeah. So, an idea that I had when we were starting was it would be fun to have some sort of a lid, a pillow that you could pull down over a drum set. And so I was like, could we put a big trap on hinges and pulleys and be able to pull it down? And Ed Brooks, who's mastering engineer from Resonant Mastering, I'm doing a little advertisement here, he looked at it and thought, oh, that's a great idea. You should do that, but you should also put a couple more up. You should put one on each wall. So there is all 3 of these big traps are on pulleys.
We learned about pulley technology in the process.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because this one's really heavy, and we have a friend, Dave Havoc, who's a mountaineer, and he was like, oh yeah, I can make that so it works easier.
What do people end up liking in terms of it being...
Typically they stay kind of half down,
Yeah.
which puts the room in kind of a medium live space. I often, if I want a tight drum sound, will put the drums underneath this big one and pull it all the way down.
Yeah.
And then a couple baffles around it, and it gets it's really actually the driest sound of the whole studio. It's tighter and deader than the booth is. The other thing I like to use it for is to get a recording of an acoustic bass next to a drum set. So the drums will be over here and the bass will be in this little world. And when you pull it down, you actually get a pretty good separation from the rest of the room. So it's kind of a tight space.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at the control room.
This way. One of the parts of this history of this building out the studio has to do with Conrad Uno and Egg Studio. See, there's a lovely picture that was given to us from Egg. And this, which came from Egg Studio, and I'm just going to take a moment and tell the story, because originally when you walked into the control room at Egg, this was the side of a huge rack of gear. And at one point, Conrad got rid of that rack, but he could not stand to throw away all the stickers of the bands who, put their stickers on the rack. So he took it off the rack, threw away the rack, but hung this on the wall. And then when he retired, everything had to go out of the studio, and I was like, I want that. So it came here.
So much great Seattle rock history.
Yeah, a lot of history there.
Gas effort, call out, just
Yeah.
too many to...
I know. Pretty amazing. Torsen, Nico Case was, I believe, the drummer in that band, and that was their business card. Anyway, yeah, Uno was retiring, and he said to me, I'm going to give you my tape decks and a bunch of microphones and some outboard gear. Yeah, welcome to the control room. This is where we listen and oftentimes play. Tape decks, turntable, mix position, and the Spectrasonics console that lived at Egg, which Uno was trying to figure out what to do with. He was thinking it would be donated to the Stax Museum, because it was built for Stax in 1969. Came to Seattle in the, I think, late 70s when Stax went bankrupt. It went to Paul Scholes at Ironwood Studio. When we started talking about this build out and this newer studio, it kind of made sense that we could take it on and refurbish it and keep it making records here in Seattle. So
maybe talk a little bit about the work, because it has not stayed the same since arriving here.
Right, yeah. Being that it was the 1970s and it was still analog tape, there were some modifications done to the console at that point that made a lot of sense, like a direct out for each channel, an insert point for each channel, and then I think there was a little bit of headphone return section that got modified. Unfortunately, some of those things actually raised the noise level of the console, and were probably things that broke the rules of Spectrasonics. Yeah. So Conrad got it working, and it was really the centerpiece of his studio, but he always had to mix through a different console, so it was the front end, which is kind of how we're working with it now. But in the course of upgrading it and kind of returning it to its original state, we did realize there was a lot of attempts to add grounds in places that shouldn't have had grounds, and so we've been working with Timothy Herzog, who's dedicated his life to Spectrasonics, and he's come down and helped us walk through it and really kind of return it to its original state in some ways.
Maybe we'll crawl under there later and show you. It's
exactly,
like it's a work of art.
It is, yeah. But it's a beautiful console. It's really simple circuitry. There's only like 2 amplification stages between the input and the output at any given time. I guess if you're bussing, maybe there's 3 amplification stages. So that's beautiful clean signal, and when it overdrives, it actually has lovely overtones. EQs sound great, and the hardware, these switches are unbelievable, and they just still work perfectly. Almost all of them. These ones are a little finicky.
Very
but yeah,
satisfying.
yes, and the lights are beautiful. Look at that. Yeah, it's really kind of become the sound of the studio, just the sound of these preamps. We do have other outboard preamps, but mostly things get recorded through the Spectra. Yeah.
On the analog side of things, what Talk a little bit about the tape decks that we have.
Well, yeah, the tape decks came also from Egg Studio. So there's, this is our 2-inch deck, and it'll run 16 tracks or 24 tracks at 15 or 30 IPS. The other deck is a nice table for the records. That's a 1/4-inch mix down deck. Honestly, it doesn't get used for a lot for mixing down these days. But we do a lot of tape transfers for people, and there's a lot of people who bring us tapes and we can transfer to digital using that. Of course, the analog record player, which gets used every day to listen to records. In the racks, there is also a lot of DIY gear. And in fact, the studio kind of grew slowly and got into building some things. At one point, our friend Paul Haraga was involved with the studio, and he built quite a few things. This is a Hamtone mic pre and an LA2 and a very unique enclosure. He also built a microphone that gets used every day. Here is a 67 clone. And then I've built some of these compressors that live in here. Some of the 7th Circle gear. Those were kits that we put together. Yeah, it's fun to be able to work on it yourself, because, you know, you're going to have to at some point. You have to open up your gear and work on it.
And then on the digital side, when we moved here, we kind of started the modernization of that,
Right.
which was really exciting.
Yeah.
We made a decision to kind of go with Dante, which is a digital protocol that goes over Ethernet, and has turned out to be, I think, a really good decision. It's allowed us a lot of flexibility, and as we've added like a headphone system.
Right, that runs over Dante. It's kind of very interesting new world, yeah.
Yeah, we have the radar converters, which we had before, but we were able to put into these new Dante enclosures, and I think sound great.
Yeah, they sound amazing.
Yeah.
And then we just recently purchased this API, the box console, which provides another set of line returns for analog side when we're tracking, but also when mixing, combined with the Spectrasonics, that gives us 32 channels of analog inputs, so we can access our analog gear while mixing. And then on the digital side, we have the Avid S1s and the dock, which we're just getting to know, and it's really been great. They're really flexible and a great way to have a tactile interface with in-the-box mixing. So kind of putting a foot into the modern world, you know. We're Luddites in some ways, but we're trying.
It's very important, John. You made it very important. You can record a record here without touching the computer. The computer can be off. And,
exactly. And this latest upgrade was a very okay, we want to keep that intact. Yeah. If you want to just not have the computer on, you can still do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming and learning a little bit more about Crackle Pop.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. And grab a t-shirt. Get your t-shirts here. $20. Bye now.